This is, of course, a Christian program and a Christian network, but we certainly interested in input from anyone who has something to share, and why someone would leave Islam is certainly interesting to me. Based on what many of my Muslim friends tell me, no one ever leaves Islam. And even though I have several close friends who are former Muslims, whenever they leave Islam, I'm told that they were never real Muslims. Not just that they were never real Muslims, that they were never Muslims at all, and that they are liars who are Jews who were paid to pretend to be former Muslims. I kid you not. I have a friend named Farhan Qureshi, for instance, and I had, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 public debates with him when he was a Muslim. He was the American representative of a group called the Muslim Debate Initiative, yet when he left Islam, he became a kind of agnostic, but when he left Islam, it was all over the comment sections of various videos that he was never a Muslim. He was pretending to be a Muslim all along, just so he could later pretend to leave Islam and then discredit Islam. And it's an interesting situation. But we have our guest, Heina Dadabhoy. Heina, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I hear you now. There you go.
Absolutely. All right. Yes, I can hear you.
So, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Yeah.
All right. Now we want to get first. You know, we have an entire program. We'll get some callers along the way, and we'll answer those as they come in. But you know, we wanted to hear your story, and of course your background and why you left Islam, and then sort of later, given whatever time we have, we can talk about anything you're interested in talking about. You know, whatever you're studying now. But give us what was your background, because you tell people that you are a former Muslim, but there are sort of different kinds of Muslims. There are people who are just kind of culturally, you know, they go to the mosque once a year, but don't do much, and then they're extremely, you know, wearing the burqa and so on. So where would you and your family fall in on that kind of spectrum?
Well, I was born and raised in Southern California to a Muslim family that at first we were fairly religious in the sense that we prayed and fasted, didn't eat pork, all that good stuff. I always knew I was a Muslim. I always knew I was different from my classmates and the people around me for that reason. But we weren't very visibly Muslim. My mother didn't cover herself. You know, we went to the mosque, but it wasn't super regular. But all that changed when I was about 5 years old, when my mother met a religious teacher who really convinced her to become more religious. Additionally, I think my parents kind of freaked out a little bit because they're immigrants and they looked around them and they saw what they saw as, you know, essentially decadence and moral degradation. And they heard all the horror stories. My mother had a friend who worked in an emergency room, and she would hear about pregnant drug addict 13-year-olds. And I think they freaked out a little bit about that. And I think they turned to becoming more devout and more religious as a way to ensure that myself and my siblings were more likely to stay on the path that they thought was appropriate for us.
Now was this a Sunni sort of background or Shia?
Sunni.
Okay.
Sunni.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what ended up happening was we moved to London for a year. We stayed with family, and I got religious education there. I was about 6, 7 years old. And that had a really deep impact on me because the Muslims over there are another level, I'd say, from the Muslims in the United States. And I came back really well influenced by that, really just into Islam. I had read all the books my mother read, you know, adult level books, and I just was really devoted and really sincere. And, you know, I would argue with my father even though you weren't supposed to in Islam. I would ask him to throw out the television because I thought it was a box of sin, and he wouldn't listen to me. And when I got older, I started covering my head. I was 10 years old when I went full-time covering my head. That was of my own volition. My parents did not pressure me in any way. I really wanted to. And I later wanted to cover my face, but my father actually said I couldn't because he said it would just cause too much strife. You know, people would really harass me in American society if I did. So he said no to me wearing it. but I would have had he let me. And so, yeah, I was very devout. I was not a once a year mosque Muslim. I was more religious and devout than my parents.
Now, so at first your parents get more conservative, and then you start getting even more conservative than they were.
I don't know if conservative is the word because it has political implications that I'm not.
Yeah. The conservative and the religious means just going back to the, sort of the getting to the basics of
more
sticking
practicing,
to those.
I'd say. Yeah, very practicing, very devout, very sincere too. I had, from the beginning, I had issues because it's very hard to read a lot of these religious texts that come out of their historical contexts and not see problems with them or issues with them. But, my ultimate feeling was, it's God's will and God understands the world better than me. So I should just submit to God's will. And it was very hard, but I kept my faith and I was very sincere in it. And I struggled really hard to stay within it, even when I started having really severe doubts. So, what you mentioned before about Muslims saying that, that ex-Muslims are all paid Zionist agents, I get that a lot. And it actually really it's a peeve of mine, and it actually upsets me because, deconverting was not fun or easy for me. And it was very difficult. And I tried very hard to stay faithful. So and not only that, but I'm pretty painfully broke. So really, where is my Zionist agent check?
Yeah. So how long did that continue before there was some kind of change?
Well, I would say that the really big doubts started when I was about 16 and a half or 17. But I didn't really say that I was out of the faith until I was 18. And initially I could barely even admit it to myself, and I kept it to myself. And I tried to continue practicing Islam so that nobody would notice. But I'm particularly bad at deception, so I ended up coming out to my parents as an atheist when I was 18, and yeah, that didn't go too well at first, of course, but
yeah, I guess my grandma was pretty devout Christian. Most of the rest of my family didn't care one way or another. My dad was a complete mocker. He would say that he's God and that I was Jesus and things like that. But I was, I don't know, maybe 14 or something like that when I'd been an atheist for a while. I realized I've never believed any of this. I've never believed any of this at all. A bunch of us were sitting in the living room one night when I mentioned it, and my uncle, who I didn't even know whether he was a Christian or not, told me I needed to have my butt whipped for being an atheist. So I was a couple years ahead of you in coming out, but I might have taken a while if I'd had Muslim parents. So yeah, go ahead and continue.
I don't think it's just having Muslim parents. I think part of it is when you're part of a minority group in the United States, your religious affiliation is very much deeply tied into your community affiliation. So the idea of essentially making myself an outsider was not something that appealed to me or even occurred to me, at age 14. Come on, you're going through puberty, you're dealing with all that entails, and you're going through school and you're figuring out all these things. The idea of saying to my community, well, I'm not part of you anymore, it's just not something that's feasible, especially for someone like me who was that religious. I mean, where would I go? Who would I turn to?
Yeah. Now, I have a question, because you said that you were in the 16 and a half to 17-year-old range when you started having these doubts. But,
the big doubts. The small doubts were going on for years before that.
Yeah, I was wondering about those, because I'm kind of wondering about the source of the doubts, because you hear nothing but rosy things from lots of people about Islam. But was it more from writings that are critical of Islam, like your research and criticisms of Islam, or are you just reading the Muslim sources and finding some problems that are arising to you and not from somewhere else?
The latter. The former, the criticisms of Islam, often they come off as so hostile and sometimes kind of racist, to the point where they actually made me feel more like a Muslim because I felt defensive about them. I'd read these articles online with these people bashing Islam and saying it's all just, unwashed savages from the desert who want to come and take over America. That made me feel more like a Muslim because, I knew that wasn't true. But the actual texts themselves from Islam, from Muslim sources, those I read, and there were things in them that just did not jive logically, especially in this 21st century world where, if there was a claim being made that Islam, or the Quran more specifically, has science in it, it's very easy to cross-check those claims and see that that's simply not true. The gender stuff definitely played a role too, because there's a verse in the Quran that says that men are placed a degree above women. And as a child, I'd look around me and I had boy cousins who were, 2-3 years older than me, and they were running around misbehaving. They got bad grades. They didn't pray 5 times a day. Whereas I was sitting there and I was religious and I was a good student and I was a very well-behaved child. And I remember thinking, how come they get to be a degree above me simply for the gender that they were born into? So it was things like that.
So, so these are things that are coming directly out of the Muslim sources,
Yes.
and so the gender issue, and what was the did you see scientific problems, or
Yes.
you mentioned that I wasn't clear on how that what role that played.
Well, there's this pamphlet that you can find online. It's a free pamphlet that a lot of Muslim organizations hand out, and it's called The Scientific Miracles of the Quran. And when I initially read it, I was very awestruck by it. And I read a lot of Harun Yahya as well. So I read a lot of his stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I thought, oh, science clearly jives with the Quran and it proves that Islam is true. But, if you really look at the science, it doesn't actually match up. And there's a lot of selective readings and interpretations that go into this claim that the Quran predated all these scientific claims and somehow corroborates them. That's just, it's simply not true. And finding that out was a huge blow.
Yeah, and that is, I've actually, because I've debated on Muhammad, the scientific issues come up a lot. And that was actually the first argument that anyone ever gave me for Islam. So this was years, this was the 1990s when someone sat me down. I had a friend who was a Muslim convert. He had converted to Islam, and I was interested in why, and he sat me down and showed me a video about the scientific miracles of the Quran. But even back then, when I knew nothing about Islam, he's showing me a video, and it would be a Quran verse, and then it would give all this scientific data afterwards, and I would just be thinking, that's not what the verse said. That's not what the verse said. And a lot of these claims, usually all you have to do is say, here's what the claim about the scientific miracle is saying, and just read the verse, and you find out it's not actually saying a lot. But it's been pointed out that the confirmation always seems to come after the scientific discovery, right? There's a scientific discovery,
Exactly.
and then that's what the Quran was saying.
And besides that, some of them are flat out wrong. I spent hours once arguing with this Muslim on Facebook who found me after I had an article in the New York Times featuring me back in May, I believe, and a lot of Muslims came out of the woodwork to fight with me over that. And his proof was that the Quran says that the mountains are like pegs that stabilize
tent
the
pegs.
earth.
Yeah, they're tent pegs, and this stabilizes the earth.
And that made me laugh because mountains form at the most unstable parts of the earth.
Yeah, and it's God put these in place, right? Not that they form out of the earth. It's God put them in place.
And I was trying to explain to him, just show him basic plate tectonics, because growing up in Southern California, most of us learned plate tectonics when we were toddlers and experienced our first earthquakes, right? So I was trying to explain to him the basics of plate tectonics, that, it's ruptures in the earth, it's fault lines that cause mountains. Mountains don't stabilize, they're products of instability, essentially. And he just could not hear me. He could not process this information that I was giving him.
Yeah, and there are Muslims who are watching this, and I actually want to give them a little information, because I don't want them to think, oh, we're just trash talking the Quran here, and we're not backing it up. So I'm actually gonna pull up a few verses. I already had this up on my laptop, because we were recording earlier on the science and Islam. But let me just give a couple of examples here of what I'm talking about. Chapter 18, verses 83 to 86 of the Quran. You could just read chapter 18, verse 86 for those of you out there. But they ask, this is what the passage says. they ask thee concerning dual carnain. Say, I will, and as far as dual carnain, there's some dispute about his identity. Lots of Muslim commentators believe it's Alexander the Great. Some believe it's Cyrus. But whoever it is, he does something very interesting. So they ask thee concerning dual carnain. Say, so people are asking Muhammad about dual carnain, and here's the response. Say, I will rehearse to you something of his story. Verily, we established his power on earth, and we gave him the ways and the means to all ends. One such way he followed until, when he reached the setting of the sun, so this guy traveled far enough, he traveled far enough to reach the setting of the sun, he found it set in a spring of murky water. And near it he found a people. So Alexander the Great, that's who Dual Carnain is, travels so far he reaches the place where the sun sets, and he finds the sun sets in a murky pool. Now, as a Muslim, you can reinterpret that. You can do something with that. But the point is, if you're defending Islam by saying the Quran is this, obviously scientific, miraculous work, then when we read passages like that, and there are tons of passages along those lines, both in the area of human reproduction and in the structure of the universe, and there are 7 earths, and there are 7 heavens above the earth, and semen is formed between the backbone and the ribs. There are all kinds of problems. But you want to reinterpret those, and then you go to verses that aren't saying anything scientific, and you say, this is a scientific miracle. And so the idea is, yes, you could, if you wanted to, reinterpret everything that really looks like it's wrong and say it means something else. But if you're trying to give evidence to someone who is not a Muslim, we look at this and say, the clearest scientific statements in the Quran are just wrong. And the ones you're using as scientific statements usually aren't saying anything that's right, or anything that wouldn't have been known by other people. And so anyway, the point here is just, those of you who are Muslims, when we're talking about this, if you want to argue that Islam is true, you need a better argument than scientific accuracy. So I'll let you come up with whatever you can, but you need a better argument. All right, so Heina, go ahead and continue. What's going on?
What else is going on? Well, I like that point you made about the idea that if you didn't already believe in Islam, you wouldn't see the scientific accuracy of the Quran that the Muslims claim. And that was actually at the heart of what made me eventually deconvert. It was me asking myself a very frank question that, had I not been born and raised a Muslim, had I not been told my whole life from birth that this was true and this is who we were, would I have accepted Islam of my own volition, if I had not been raised that way? And the answer was no. Mm-hmm. And, that was incredibly troubling to me. Other Muslims who I met after deconversion who were trying to get me to convert back to Islam, they didn't see any significance in that, but I really see a lot of significance in that, because then at that point you're posing the question, well, people are generally, they're born into a certain society that's dominated by a certain religion, and they generally have that religion and they die an adherent of that religion. And if that's really all there is to most religions, that you're born into it, you live it, and you die it, then there's nothing necessarily that's universally or transcendentally true about it. It just means that that's what you're socialized to accept, just like we're socialized to accept certain forms of clothing or hairstyles. Mm-hmm. So that's really what got to me about that.
I know an atheist named John Loftus who runs the Debunking Christianity website, but he advocates what he calls the outsider test of faith, that you should think, how would this evidence look to an outsider, and not just to me as an insider. Not sure I entirely agree with that, but that seems to be the similar idea to what you're saying. How would someone else who wasn't raised into this look at this evidence? All right, so you're 18 when you tell your parents that you're an atheist?
Yes. And
so what happens after that?
Initially, I don't think they took me very seriously. They thought
and by the way, how long ago is this?
8, almost 9 years ago now.
Oh, okay.
Actually.
So it's been a while. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm probably going to do a big celebration for my 10-year at some point or something. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, when I first came out at 18, my parents didn't take me very seriously. I think they thought I was just tired of wearing a headscarf, or I was having doubts. So at first, they didn't even react quite very strongly. I think it was maybe a week after I came out to them as an atheist. I didn't pussyfoot around it either. I didn't say, oh, I am having doubts. I said to them, I don't believe in God. I'm not a Muslim. I am an atheist. I was upfront with them. But I don't think it really hit them until a week later when they realized that I meant what I had just said. And after that, for months, they dragged me all over the state to see all these various imams, to go to every different mosque they could think of and talk to all these imams and see if they could answer my questions, is what they called it, even though I didn't really have that many questions at that point. I had already asked my questions for years before that. But essentially, I was just sitting and debating and talking with all these imams who wouldn't look me in the face, by the way, because, you know, that the gender segregation in Islam. So it was very odd having these deep intellectual debates for hours with people who wouldn't even look me in the eye. But and eventually, I think they just realized that that wasn't going to help either. I would come home from school because I was still in university at the time. I'd come home and there'd be someone just at my house who they thought would be able to convince me to come back. It was very tumultuous. It was very confusing. And then I think they stopped being in denial about it and realized that no matter how much they tried, they were not going to change my mind. And so then the fight started, the yelling, the screaming, the disruption. And I honestly don't necessarily blame them too much for it because they weren't prepared for it. This was not anything they had ever considered as a possibility in this world. And they had never heard of someone leaving Islam. Like you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, Muslims have this belief that no one ever leaves Islam. So to them, either I was on drugs or I had been influenced by somebody. You know, they just couldn't, they couldn't conceive of it. And especially from the angle of heaven and hell, because the afterlife is a very strong belief for most Muslims. And so my mother worried that, you know, I was going to roast in hell for all eternity. So I tried to be patient with them and I tried to, you know, stay with them and I tried to come up with compromises and boundaries that worked for everybody. And it did pay off. I mean, now we have a decent relationship. I mean, I don't talk about my lack of belief with them. And they talk about their religion to me, but I just refuse the bait. And I've sort of prioritized our relationship as a family to talking about these issues, which I think a lot of families don't talk about certain issues.
Now, we have to take a break in a moment, but one of the difficult things for parents, especially Muslim parents, is that when a child leaves the religion, there can be a kind of social embarrassment in the Muslim community, as if they were some sort of bad parents. I know when one of my best friends left Islam, he became a Christian, but I mean his parents actually moved. They moved away from the area that they lived in because it was just an embarrassment to them. It's you've done something wrong by raising your child wrong or something like that. So they moved to a completely different city. So I'm guessing that would depend on the sort of how close knit the community is. But did your parents experience any of that?
They really did, and that's probably the thing that I feel the worst about, because I mean it's not my fault or their fault, but people in the community can be very vicious. I mean, it's the same thing with any small community that feels very insular from the rest of the community. People would ask them very pointed, snarky questions. All kinds of rumors were flown about me. I would hear things about myself from other people that I had never heard of in my life. And, that's why I kept quiet about it for a little while. After I first came out to everybody, I laid low for a few years in the hopes that they would move on and gossip about somebody else. And, there's always an affair or a divorce or someone being gay to occupy their time. So I think they've moved on from gossiping about me for the most part. But yeah, it was really tough for my family.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are all kinds of parents out there who can, just imagine, hey, when your child grows up and hits 16, 17, 18, what would you be, whether you're Christian or Muslim or whatever, what would you be thinking? Your child just goes off and rejects what they've been taught, and you don't know why. There was an interesting parallel in what you were saying, that my friend Nabil, when he left Islam, his parents responded in exactly the same way. They brought him around to various imams and religious scholars to try and convert him back to Islam. And they're thinking, if whatever objections he had to Islam, once once he understands why those objections were wrong and that the evidence does support Islam. And one time he contacted me and said, hey, they're taking me to scholars in the UK. Can you help me put together a case based on everything we'd been discussing? So we actually put together like an 80-page document of arguments against Islam that we've been looking. We were a Christian and a Muslim who were best friends in college, but we've been discussing all of this. So we put it all together, and he went there and slapped it down in front of them, and just never really got any kind of responses. And so then his parents had to go through the similar situation of sort of realizing that this isn't going to work, that I can't convince them, that I can't convince him back. And so it's interesting the sort of pattern that emerges, because the parents are dealing with similar things. All right, we have to take a quick break for about a minute or two. We're going to come back, and we've got several callers on the line, so we'll take some calls, and then we'll find out a little bit about what you're doing now. And we'll be back here in just a moment here on the Trinity Channel. Welcome back to the Trinity Channel. We are interviewing our friend Heina Dadabhoy, and we have some callers on the line. We want to hear a little bit about what Heina is doing nowadays, but we want to take some of these callers. So who do we have on the line first?
Well, hello. It's an honor.
Hi. Who do we have on the line?
Hi. My name is Greg.
Hi, Greg.
Hi. I just wanted to say, I was a Mormon for almost 45 years. A lot of people don't know that Joseph Smith said he was a modern-day Mohammed. Did you know that?
I've heard that. I've never seen any source on it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It's actually in the Mormon church history. He said he would be a modern-day Mohammed. And the comparisons between the polygamy and the new scriptures and he's the prophet are very similar. And it's very, very difficult when you're in an organization like that. And from the time you're very, very little, and I was always told, Joseph Smith next to Jesus Christ accomplished more for man than anybody who's ever lived. And that's actually in the Mormon Doctrine and Covenants. And you're taught this, and then when you leave, it's almost like you're renouncing citizenship in a country. And it's so painful, and it's so hard. And the Jehovah's Witnesses experience, the Seventh-day Adventist experience. I'm hearing this young lady talk about this. And I wanted people to know that Christianity, when you're asking somebody like a Mormon or a Muslim or a Jehovah's Witness or somebody to listen to you, you have to understand what you're asking them to give up. You're asking them to literally turn their world upside down. And so you're going to have to explain to them why it's worth it. Why are you willing to do such a devastating thing in your home and with your friends? Mm-hmm. And the biggest problem that I ran into was uneducated Christians. For 40 years, I came across Christian after Christian who had no answers. Like, why would Jesus pray to himself if they're both God? I was listening to Walter Martin one night. He was talking about, I think it was Philippians chapter 2, where Jesus Christ did not think he had to hold on to his godhood and came down, became a man, and while he was a man, he invoked God and so forth, just like we do. But these are answers that Christians need to have, and I'm very grateful for your program, because your program teaches Christians how to answer questions with love, with dignity, and how not to offend people of other religions. I wanted to tell this young lady how much courage I think she has, because it is really, really rare for somebody to do what she has done.
Absolutely. When I first came out as an ex-Muslim, I couldn't find any other ex-Muslims who I could talk to, but I did find a lot of ex-Mormons, and they definitely helped me out quite a bit because they understood how hard it could be. And I would like to thank you, for what you just said, but our numbers are growing. We have an organization in North America called Ex-Muslims of North America now, and there's a Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, so the numbers are growing. So, I mean, I may have been one of the first to come out so publicly in the way that I did, but I'm not the last.
Yeah.
Well, when I left Mormonism, I had nowhere to go because the Mormons taught me from the day I was little there are only two churches, the Mormon church and the church of the devil. And every other church is the church of the devil. The Jehovah's Witnesses teach that, the Seventh-day Adventists teach that. And so when you're raised in one of these works-based faiths, if you leave, they literally believe you have entered the world of the devil. You're going to go to hell. And not only that, typically, like I know in Mormonism, you know who gets it worse than anybody in the afterlife? The people who get it the worst? Ex-Mormons. Ex-Mormons.
It's the same thing with Islam, actually. You know, ex-Muslims it's one of the most, I think it is the most unforgivable thing. It's considered to be one of those things that Allah does not have mercy for. So I definitely can understand and empathize with that.
Yeah, tying this together, when he's talking about the kind of psychological pressure, you know, especially for someone, he mentioned, you know, when you are calling a Muslim to convert to Christianity, understanding how difficult that is. In Islam, the unforgivable sin, the worst thing you can do is shirk, right? Associating a partner with Allah. So that's the worst thing you can do. That's the one thing that if you die and haven't repented for, if you do other sins, Allah can still forgive you. He can just show you mercy. But that's the one thing He will not show mercy for.
And apostasy is like super shirk.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate, like it's double shirk. And I joke all the time with my atheist friends who had never been Muslim that they have a better chance of getting into Islamic heaven than I do.
Yeah, and so with the apostasy, it's not just judgment after death. It's that there can be repercussions in this world, right? In an Islamic society, you get killed for that sort of thing. So just for you Christians out there who are watching and you have Muslim friends and you're wondering, boy, why is this Muslim friend not getting this? When you say, hey, my Muslim friend, believe in Jesus, He's Lord, what your Muslim friend is hearing is, hey, you're telling me to do the thing that I've been taught all my life will get me a one-way ticket to hell, and I might have a good chance of losing my entire family, my entire social framework. They just abandon me and turn their backs on me and never want anything to do with me. And if someone ever decides to enforce Sharia, it's going to come to chop my head off. Yeah, that's what I want. So can be very difficult there. All right, so thank you, Greg, and we have a couple more callers. Who do we have next on the line? Hello, who do we have?
I think you got me again.
Who's this? Is this Greg?
Yeah, you got. But I wanted to follow up with one quick point. I don't know why you put me back on, but maybe it was God's will, huh?
Don't worry. As soon as there's a break, I'm going to go back there and smack the tech guys. But maybe there's a divine purpose here. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, a lot of people don't know this, and I know it's a Muslim show, but a lot of people don't know this. But the Mormons had a thing called blood atonement. Blood atonement. And if you left the Mormon Church, Jesus Christ did not pay for 4 sins. He didn't pay for adultery. He didn't pay for murder. He didn't pay for theft, and He didn't pay for apostasy. And so in the days of Brigham Young, if you left the Mormon Church, the only way for you to have forgiveness was to have your blood shed. And this is the history that a lot of Mormons don't like to talk about. But it is, I don't know what it is, but in a lot of religions, they will make it. They will tell their adherents, and what she just said, if you leave us, you get it worse than anybody. In Mormonism, it's called outer darkness. Only a former Mormon and the devils themselves can go to outer darkness. Hitler can't go to Stalin can't go to outer darkness, but an ex-Mormon, they can go there. And so I'm glad that you said what you said, because people have to realize what is at stake for Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Seventh-day Adventists, not just Muslims. There are many organizations that will tell you, if you ever leave us, this is the price you will pay. This is the price you will pay.
Well, sounds like you're in all kinds of trouble if Mormonism is true. And Heina, Heina and I are both in all kinds of trouble because we got into a discussion about this one day, but
yeah,
we're both in trouble if Islam is true. All right, thank you, Greg. And all right, who do we have next on the line? And let's see if it's Greg again.
it's Asam Khan, just the other Greg.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello?
Can you turn him up again? I can't hear him very well.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hey,
hello.
there we go. I can hear you now. What's
How
up?
are you, David?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
My question to you, this young lady, is, since she has become, she is out of Islam, which is thank goodness to God that she is out of there. But my question is, why did she decide, and how did she decide to become an atheist and not pick up any other religion? So there are some lot more religions out there that are not vicious like Islam or relentless like Islam, but there are some more religions that are much more loving and kind and gentle that she could have picked up, but she decided to go and become an atheist. What was the reason?
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
Thank you, brother. And that's Heina, that's one thing I was kind of wondering as far as your history. Was it first rejecting Muhammad as a prophet and then becoming an atheist, or was it kind of all at once?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to let the callers know that I can hear you too, so you don't have to ask David to ask me. You can ask me. The reason I left Islam was not because it was vicious or violent. That was not the reason I left Islam. So the idea that just because other religions seem softer and kinder, that they would be appealing to me, that's not what I'm looking for in a worldview. I'm looking for rigorous truth and testability. And I know David and the rest of you listening, most of you think that Christianity can withstand that sort of rigorous intellectual questioning, but I feel that all forms of theism don't satisfy the tests that I believe are necessary for a logical, rational, empirically based worldview. And I was not ignorant of other religions as a Muslim. I was very much interested in Christianity because growing up in a Christian society as a Muslim, you do have to know your stuff in order to take on Christians. And I did think about debating Christians when I got older. I mean, I left Islam before that became an option to debate Christians as a Muslim. But yeah, I was aware of other religions and I did look into them, but they seemed to me to ultimately fail the test of empiricism that I was looking for.
And so, brother, that's a response. But there was I might have missed it, but so did you renounce Islam first and then later become an atheist, or was it kind of all at
I guess
once?
I didn't answer that question quite.
Yeah, you answered his.
The first thing that happened was I didn't renounce Islam publicly, but in my heart I did leave Islam, and I became something of a secular deist, I guess, where I believed in a creator of the universe, some sort of intelligent design, whatever you want to call it, but I didn't really have a religion. And then after that, I've read some things that really showed me that there was, to me, I'm on a Christian show, I'm not going to forget that. To me, I realized that there was no evidence for a creator either. So then I became an atheist.
Yeah, and just so you know, we're not made of glass here, so say whatever you want. We won't break.
Right.
But we apparently have a ton of callers, so people are apparently interested here. Let's see what they have to say. Who do we have on the line next? Hello, caller. Hi, who do we have? All right, go to the next one if they're not answering. Hello.
Mr. Floyd, is that, are you talking to me?
Yes, I'm talking to you. What's up? How's it going?
Okay, let me address this nice young lady. I wish I was present there with you, because the first thing we would do is just simply embrace you as a human being and let you know that you have value as a person, because, and guts too, by the way. But the problem here is that any system of thinking, any system has certain things that it has to do. It has a lot of questions that it has to answer. Two of the things that it has to do is to be self-consistent at all times and in everything. And the second thing is it has to be livable. You have to be able to, everyone, everywhere, at any time has to be able to live completely consistently to it. Now, atheism has a problem because it tries to prove a negative, and that you can't do because you have to be everywhere at all times in order to say that there is no God, which means that you would really have to be the definition of a God to say that there is no God. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think that what you have done is to discard one false system of Islam for another false system, which is atheism. All of these non-Christian religions, if you read people like Cornelius Van Til and Rousseau's John Rushdoony and by What Standard, and also Francis Schaeffer in his books Escape from Reason and The God Who Is There, show that if you think that there is no God, then what you are is you're left out on your own. You have no reason for being who and what you are, which is a real person, and you have nobody to really care for you or care about you. Christianity, on the other hand, solves the moral problem because it says that there is a supreme creator who establishes standards for us. We fail those standards, and instead of discarding us, the creator becomes one of us and takes our punishment so that he can give us his own righteousness and life. Now, greater love has no one than to sacrifice themselves for you. You can only accept that by the open, empty hands of faith. It takes more faith to disbelieve in God than it does to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. So, young lady, Christianity makes sense. You can live according to Christianity. You cannot live according to atheism.
Okay, well, I'm living right now. I'm living my life, so I am living according to atheism. So I don't understand what you mean by that. But to address some of your points, I'm really sorry that no one in your life loves and cares about you besides Jesus. But I have lots of people in my life who love and care for me and have sacrificed for me, and I sacrifice for them. So I don't have this hole that I need to be filled by Jesus. So I'm really sorry that your life is like that, where you feel that need. I can't imagine how terrible your life must be if that's the case. And in terms of proving the negative, it's not necessarily proving a negative so much as refuting the supernatural beliefs around me, whether it's Allah, Buddha, Jesus. You know, I'm not proving a negative. I'm just proving or stating that it's wrong. You know, it's taking the position of there is no supernatural in the world. I don't have to prove that. It's up to people making the claim to prove their claim. And I found it falls short. But if your beliefs work for you and you're not out to impose them on people or harm people by them, I have no problem with it. But I will say that I am living by atheism, and, you know, it's fine. I'm doing better than I ever have in my whole life. So if God's looking to punish me, he's doing a pretty bad job of it.
All right, so yeah, there is a problem. See, on the one hand, the point about the universal negative is true, right? Like, I can't prove that there are no unicorns anywhere in the universe. I would have to be at all points in the universe to know that there is no unicorn anywhere in the universe. So there's a sense in which you can't prove that, and that you couldn't prove, you know, that God doesn't exist, because if you were going to prove that, you'd have to know everything in order to know that God doesn't exist. But in another sense, that's kind of it's not a very strong point, because, I mean, I don't believe in Thor. You know, can I universally prove that there's no Thor anywhere? No, I can't do that. But that doesn't mean that it's somehow irrational for me to not believe in Thor. So the point is, the man who called in, he rejects the existence of all kinds of things that he couldn't disprove in a universal sense. So that, as far as his other point, just what he was getting at something along the lines of, yeah, you can live, you can exist as an atheist, but at the bottom of it, and this is, he's taking since he mentioned Van Til and I think Bonson and Schaeffer, he's pointing out that if you dig down deep enough, you'll find these contradictions in your thinking that don't accord with your with your worldview. And whether that's the case or not, we'll
because I feel like we can play this game all day. I could point out what's wrong with Christianity and contradictory in that, but that would be a whole other show, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And by the way, the guy who called in, I didn't catch your name, but I happen to agree that at the bottom of other worldviews there are these contradictions. But Heina's right. That's a very long discussion to unearth those. But maybe we can have some shows on that one day. All right, let's go ahead and go to our next caller. Who do we have on the line? What is this? What?
Let's go. Let's go, badass.
What?
Come on, let's go, badass.
Who are you talking to?
Come on, what do you got to say?
What? I didn't
talk to me like this in my house.
I didn't understand what you said. What did you say?
I don't like how you walk in here and say, I ain't found your ass.
What?
I feel like we're listening to somebody else's conversation.
Yeah, it sounds like someone butt dialed the Trinity channel. Sat down on their phone, accidentally dialed the Trinity channel while they were in some sort of barroom brawl. Unless he was yelling at me, which I didn't catch because I couldn't understand what he was saying. All right, but friend, if you want to call back and just try to make it clear, if you're yelling at me or at Heina, or you're in some sort of barroom brawl, just make it clear who you're attacking. I have no problem. I'm not going to let you scream at Heina, but you could come in and you could call in and scream at me. And
I've been yelled at plenty.
I would let someone go after you a little more just because you have kind of thick skin and you're a debater and so on. So you're not made of glass either. Yeah, we need to figure out what was going on there. All right, do we have some more calls? Who do we have on the line?
Hello?
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 Hi.
Hey.
Hi, how's it going?
This is James.
Hey, how's it going, James?
Yeah, I'm a long-time listener of your show, and your show really opened my eyes as to the truth about Islam, because I wasn't really aware about Islam and its theology and stuff like that. But I have to say, in the last few years that I've been watching ABN, I've been truly amazed, because I could never believe that Muslims could believe what they actually do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my question is a little bit off topic, but it has to do with Islam, not with atheism.
Okay, well, you go ahead and ask it, and if you think it's too far off topic, we might not answer it, but we might, just for fun. But go ahead.
Okay, do you have a laptop with you?
Yeah.
Okay, could you read Zechariah 14:12?
You want me to just go to a Bible?
Yeah, Zechariah 14:12.
All right, Zechariah 14 and 12. All right, now this will be the plague with which the Lord will strike all the peoples who have gone to war against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they stand on their feet, and their eyes will rot in their sockets. Ouch! And their tongue will rot in their mouth. Is that what you're looking for?
Okay, could you also read the hadith where Muhammad says the trees and stones will cry out?
I don't have the hadith with me, but yes, Muhammad says that the end will not come, the end times will not come until the Muslims fight against the Jews fight against the Muslims, and a tree or stone will say, "There's a Jew hiding behind me. Come kill him."
Okay. Can't you see there's a huge contradiction between those two verses?
If you mean that God in Zechariah says there's going to be a horrible punishment for those who come against Jerusalem, and that in Islam it's no, you have to go fight the Jews. Is that what you're getting at?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, but yeah, they're I don't know, what is that all you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I'm just amazed because, like, the Muslims say they believe in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, but if you read that verse from the Old Testament, it basically contradicts everything that the Muslims believe.
I can address that.
Go ahead.
Muslims don't believe that the Old Testament and the New Testament, as they currently exist, reflect the quote-unquote true revelation. They don't believe that that's true for Muslims now. They believe that it used to be something that was correct and that would flow with the Quran and with the Hadith, but that it's been changed over time to reflect the people who were interpreting it and translating it and so on. And they believe that the Old Testament and New Testament that exist now have some semblance to what they believe is the truth, but they don't think that it reflects what they think is revelation. So that's not quite what they believe.
Yeah, and one of the things we address on the show is Heina's absolutely right that a Muslim would look at that and say, you know, who cares what is in Zechariah? But I think since he's a longtime viewer, one of the main sort of arguments we use is that the Quran affirms not only the inspiration but also the preservation and authority of the Torah and the Gospel and all what it says, all the revelation that has come to you. And the reason that Muslims today don't believe that the Torah and the Gospel have been preserved is just that they know having read some of the passages that the Gospel and the Torah contradict what Islam teaches. Now, with the issue of Zechariah, that's not actually part of the Torah. Now you could argue that when the Quran affirms the inspiration of the Jewish scriptures or so on, that it's including Zechariah, and there'd be support from that from the Hadith when Muhammad's companions were asked about passages which refer to him. Sometimes they're quoting Isaiah, so they're including more in the Torah than we would be familiar with. Than we think of the Torah. That just if this is new terminology to anyone out there, the Torah is generally regarded as the first 5 books of the Old Testament. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Torah is the collection of books revealed to Moses. But there are centuries of books revealed after that. So Zechariah is one of the prophets, one of the minor prophets. But here's the thing: if you want to go in that direction and say there's something in Islam that's contradicting something in the Bible, I think there are just much better examples. And since you're a Christian, just pointing out, hey, according to the Gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Jesus died on the cross for sins and rose from the dead and claimed to be the divine Son of God, and Islam contradicts that, and yet Islam affirms the Gospel as the inspired, preserved, authoritative Word of God. But Heina's absolutely correct that pretty much any Muslim you go up to would say, no, you've got some massive corruption on your hands. So the first discussion that I would have with a Muslim, if you're trying to bring this up, is going to chapter 3, verses 3 through 4 of the Quran, which says that the Torah and the Gospel are the Word of Allah. And after that, maybe chapter 18, verse 27, which says that no one can change Allah's words. And then chapter 5, verse 47, which commands Christians to judge by the gospel, and that presupposes that we have the gospel if we're going to judge by it. Chapter 7, verse 157, which talks about Christians reading about Muhammad in the Torah and the gospel. And chapter 10, verse 94, which is incredibly interesting because Muhammad is told by Allah, if you're having doubts about what we have revealed to you, ask those who read the book before you. So Muhammad is told, hey, Muhammad, if you're having doubts, you need to go to the people of the book. That's Jews and Christians. So reading the Quran from beginning to end, you wouldn't get the idea that the gospel has been corrupted. That's something that happened later when Muslims actually read the gospel and found out it doesn't line up with Islam. So you'd have to have that conversation because, as Heina pointed out, when you talk to a Muslim, they're not going to believe in what you have. They're going to believe that what you have has been corrupted. But after you've gone through what the Quran says and you've made a case for why the word of Allah cannot be corrupted, then you can point out things and say, this doesn't line up with Islam. And this kind of ties into what the earlier caller was. if you dig down deep enough, you find contradictions in the opposing person's worldview. So it's similar manner, but it's a different kind of inconsistency than he would have wanted to argue is in atheism. All right, we have our final break, and then we'll come back. If we have more callers, we'll take some more callers. Other than that, Heina and I will talk about whatever we find interesting, whatever pops into our head. All right, we'll be back here in just a moment on the Trinity Channel. Welcome back to the Trinity Channel. We are with our friend Heina Dadabhoy, and she's been sharing with us how she left Islam and became an atheist, and certainly a very interesting woman who would come on a Christian network and share all of this and take callers. But Heina, we have a few more callers on the line. Do you want to jump right to them, or do you want to comment on anything that's been going on so far?
Well, I remembered my favorite and most bizarre argument in favor of Islam that I ever heard, and I want to share that because I don't know if it's something that an outsider might know about, but an old family friend of ours showed up at my house not long after I left Islam, and he had been educated in France, and his Islamic school in France taught him that Nietzsche was right, to break down Christianity and say it was wrong according to them. And he said that he believed that Islam was the answer to Nietzsche's problem. That was his argument. And on top of that, he argued that me being skeptical of Islam was me mimicking the Western cultural imperialism that I had been taught from school. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a very, very interesting argument. Not necessarily one that holds water, but that's one that I have never heard before and had never heard since.
I heard the weirdest argument for Islam I ever heard was a Muslim contacted me and said Muhammad Ali was the greatest athlete in the world, and he converted to Islam. He was Cassius Clay before then, but he converted to Islam, and so I had to show an athlete who was of comparable greatness to Muhammad Ali, who left Islam and converted to Christianity, or I would have to admit that Islam is true. And that's the most interesting one I got. But yeah, the lovely Nietzsche argument is that's a new one. I never heard that one. All right, let's take some more callers. Who do we have on the line?
Hello?
Hello. Hi.
Hello?
Hi, who are we speaking with?
You're talking to John.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. First of all, I want to commend you and your station for the wonderful approach to the dangers of Islam. Mm-hmm. And I'm a conservative Jew. And first of all, I want to correct you that the Torah does not stop with Deuteronomy. Mm-hmm. It goes from Genesis to Deuteronomy, and from then Deuteronomy from Joshua to Malachi.
Well, you let me comment briefly, because when I was my major was philosophy with an emphasis in religious studies, and and I agree with you. The way my Judaism professor, who's a rabbi, he explained it in terms of kind of concentric circles. You have the Torah, which is the first 5 books, and then you have a kind of looser sense, and then you even get out to the oral Torah, which was eventually incorporated into the Talmud. But that was what I was taught. But go ahead, and you can correct that if that's wrong.
Yes, that's what I wanted to correct you about. Okay. The idea is that the Torah includes the 5 books of Moses, mm-hmm. and then the 24 prophets from Joshua to Malachi, and the Talmud, because when Moses was in heaven, and the angels wanted to kick him out because he thought they told God that he's going to have wars in heaven, and God said, "No, he's a good man. Leave him up here." And then he was taught the Talmud, which explained the 613 commandments which Jews have. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we don't try and convert Muslims or Christians to Judaism is because we have 613 commandments when the Messiah comes back for the first, last, and only, when he comes comes for the first, last, and only time to rebuild the temple, thank God. But non-Jews only have 7 commandments of Noah. When Noah got off the boat, God gave Noah 7 commandments to teach all the human beings of the earth, and Christianity and Islam, if they keep the 7 commandments, they will get heaven. And there's a famous book called The Rainbow Connection, which is a very famous book about the 7 commandments. And I always give the example when I talk to my fellow non-Jews, which I'm involved with a lot, because I'm a great, I love to socialize and everything like that. I always tell them that they'll be sitting in the reserve seats. The Jews will be sitting in the box seats, but we'll all be sitting in the same ballpark. And that's why we don't go out and try and convert Christians or Muslims to or Buddhists to Judaism, because we have 613 commandments. If you like your wonderful McDonald's cheeseburgers, we can't have them because milk
that's the dairy and the beef there.
Right, milk is mother's milk, which is life, and meat you have to kill an animal for that. So God said the Jews, we can't have that. But Muslims and Christians and all non-Jews can have that and enjoy it. You know, so the idea is that I love your program. I'm gonna give a donation to your program because you warn about the dangers of Islam to the United States and to Europe and of course to the Middle East and especially Israel, God forbid. But the idea is that you should include more ideas from Judaism when you talk to your people.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you for that, brother. And you know, just so you, well, we're kind of not experts in Judaism. We different people have different interests and backgrounds. I know some about atheism, I know some about Islam, and I know some about Christianity. But if you'd ever like to have a discussion or a dialogue, we're obviously going to disagree because we believe that Jesus is the Messiah. But if you'd like to have a discussion on that, we'd love to have that on a future episode for a more complete discussion. Heina, did you have any comments before we go to the next caller?
No, not really.
All right, let's go to the next caller. Who do we have on the line?
Hello.
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 Hi, how's it going?
Hi, Mr. Wood. How are you?
We're good. We're good.
This is Akil again. How are you? How's everything?
Hi, Akil. You got to keep it on topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm calling. I don't have access to your show to see it. And when I call in, I'm maybe calling like I am now, coming from work. So when I heard a little bit, you're talking about how the Quran proves the Bible. Is that correct?
How the Quran what?
How it proves the Bible. Is that what you're talking about tonight?
I don't believe the Quran. I don't believe the Quran proves the Bible. I don't believe in the Quran, so I don't believe it proves anything. It might prove, what certain Islamic beliefs are about certain things, but I would say. Hey, first, don't look, Akil. We know when you call in, you start trying to yell over everybody. Don't do that here. We're going to be respectful. But I would say the Quran affirms the inspiration, preservation, and authority of the Torah and the Gospel. Now, just since you weren't watching the program, we have a guest whose name is Heina, who was a Muslim, raised as a Muslim, and left Islam, and is now an atheist. So that's the topic. Do you have anything on our topic?
Okay, well, I don't have anything in relation to Tina, but I do have something in regards to the Quran proving or saying, hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, that the Quran, in fact, the Quran does substantiate that Allah gave to Moses the Torah, and He gave to Isa the Injil. But the Quran also mentions quite clearly throughout the Quran that the people before did tamper and did manipulate their scripture.
Okay,
so we talked about that.
Hey, where does it say that about the gospel? I want it to say gospel, and that the gospel was changed. So give us chapter and verse of the Quran. Hey, Akil, I got a Quran right here. Tell me chapter and verse where it says the gospel was changed. The people who had the gospel changed it.
Given the scripture before, so it's both. It refers to the Jews and the Christians.
Okay, where? Oh, whoa. Chapter and verse, where does it say that Christians changed their scriptures?
Scripture. It's a general statement.
Well, okay. Give us the general statement that includes Christians and is referring to the gospel about corrupting their scriptures.
Go to Surah 3.
Surah 3.
Believe it's verse 187. I'm driving now, so but this is from what I remember, 187.
And remember, Allah took a covenant from the people of the book to make it known and clear to mankind and not to hide it, but they threw it away behind their backs and purchased with it some miserable gain, and vile was the bargain they made. So you're saying that refers to corruption.
That's one verse. That's one verse.
Whoa. Notice what this says. And remember, let's read it again. Allah took a covenant from the people of the book to make it known and clear to mankind and not to hide it, but they threw it away behind their backs and purchased with it some miserable gain, and vile was the bargain. Where does it talk about the text being corrupted? This just says that some of the people of the book threw it away and didn't care about it. Does this mean that the Torah and the gospel didn't exist? If you do think it means that, if you think it means that the Torah and the gospel were lost or had been corrupted by the time of Muhammad, you are going to run into all kinds of problems, my friend, because as we pointed out earlier in the discussion, chapter 7, verse 157. Chapter 7, verse 157 says that they were reading about Muhammad in the Torah and the Gospel. Now, if you say that means it's been corrupted, think about this. Chapter 5, well, we can even go earlier than chapter 5, verse 47, which is talking about the Christians. But read chapter 5, verses 43 to 44, where some Jews come to Muhammad for judgment, and Allah says, why do they need you when they have the Torah? So think about this. This is your God during Muhammad's time saying Jews don't need Muhammad because they have the Torah. Well, if what they have is a corrupt Torah, then they do need Muhammad to correct all the errors and corruptions. And then you get to chapter 5, verse 47, which is directed towards Christians and says, let the people of the gospel judge by what Allah hath revealed therein. If any do fail to judge by the light of what Allah hath revealed, they are no better than those who rebel. So why, in the name of common sense, would Allah tell Christians to judge by the gospel if the gospel has been corrupted? Either we have reliable revelation or we don't. If we don't, if what we have is corrupted and unreliable, Allah should be saying, don't go near that book. It's been corrupted. Just go to the Quran. But that's not what He says. And then if you go to chapter 10, verse 94, which we already brought up, if Allah says to Muhammad, if you have any doubts about what we have revealed to you, ask the people who read the book before you. Well, if the book that the people of the book has is corrupted, what sense does it make to go to them to confirm the Quran? It's not going to confirm it. It's going to contradict it because it's been corrupted. So taking a verse about people throwing the Torah and the gospel behind their back, and by the way, it's not even the gospel, but let's just say it did include it and it's throwing it behind their back. That cannot, if you care at all about what the rest of the Quran says, that cannot mean that the Torah and the gospel did not exist anymore. It cannot mean that the scriptures had been corrupted, because if you say that, you're going to run into all kinds of problems with other passages of the Quran. Hope that helps. And all right, let's go on. We only have a few minutes left. Let's try and get in the rest of our callers. Who do we have on the line?
This is Robert. How are you guys doing?
Hi, Robert. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. My question is for your atheist guest. First, thank you, of course, for coming on the show and taking your time to tell us your story. And thank God that the true living God that you are out of Islam. But my question for you is you said that you're looking for a definable truth or words to that effect. My question is for you is, how do you define truth? How will you know that truth? What is your standard for truth?
My standard for truth is it's empirically, repeatedly, verifiably testable, and yeah, essentially it's a scientific method. I'm not really looking for anything in that sense. When I first left Islam, I was sort of probing and seeking and all that, but Yeah, I would say that it's something that's empirically validatable. It's not something that's based on a feeling. It's not something that's based on, belief, but something that you can just sort of, you can observe and validate with evidence. And I understand that that's different for other people.
Okay, so you have your own standard then of whatever this truth is when you find it, not based on emotion or a feeling. But I'm wondering, well, for instance, the laws of logic, for instance, law of non-contradiction. Does that exist in creation apart from your own mind?
I don't know the answer to that question because I can only know what's in my own head, right? I mean, other people can tell me what they're thinking in various ways, but I can't know that. I mean, you're asking me questions that I'm not sure have answers.
Okay, well, the law of non-contradiction is that
I'm aware.
Yeah, she knows. And brother, I'm gonna let you continue, but just so you know, we Heina and I had a debate, and I actually brought up laws of logic and how if they refer to they're not made of matter or energy or you don't find them with a telescope or a microscope, that they're universal and invariant, and they would exist independent of a human mind. So we actually did discuss that. So she is familiar. She's familiar with the argument.
And I disagree with that actually, because I think that if what would the relevance of the laws of logic be if there weren't someone here to think about it? But that's something that I feel like it's another rabbit hole we could descend into and not get out of.
Real quick, because I know we're out of time, is that you have your own truth. Everybody else has their own truth now. Like you said, you only know what's in your own head. So therefore, when it comes to things of morality, you said that you live as an atheist, and that's good for you. But everybody else lives, I guess, by their own rules, by what's in their own head. You have no standard definition, no definable thing to justify anything that is moral. And that's
well, I would say that religious people have the same problem, because all of you guys don't agree. You see Christians doing one thing and yelling that other Christians are immoral for doing things that they think are moral. So realistically, empirically speaking, if you look at the world, even people in religions, they claim they have this untouchable, infallible morality that's true across all time, but they don't, because you can see the evidence of it where, Christians used to say that slavery was from God and now they say it doesn't, just to give one example. So it does change over time and from person to person, even with religious people. So I don't see how I'm much different from you in that way.
Well, I think
slavery is from God. Absolutely, slavery is from God. Thank God for slavery. We would not be in the position we are today, but that's beside the point. Anyway,
so the ends justify the means? No. You're sounding like what you accuse atheists of being. The ends justify the means there. Yeah, I don't know if I can agree with that. I would rather be living in dirt.
Hey, brother, we have several more callers, so we don't want to leave them hanging. But so I'm going to have to disagree with the comments about slavery. I think the Bible regulates it and so on. But I think the point he was after is. You, Heina, you're saying that everything is from your own perspective and so on, but that would be true of everyone else, and so there's nothing independent of any of us that would sort of be able to say who's right about this and who's wrong. You're pointing out that Christians disagree on all kinds of things, but that's just in his defense. He's not saying everyone has agreed on everything, or that everyone, even Christians, have agreed, or that any particular group of Christians have agreed on anything. It's that Christians at least agree that there is some kind of standard that is independent of them, and Muslims will believe the same thing, that there is a standard independent of them.
And that's cute because it doesn't actually lead to any kind of consensus. So what? You have something to point to and say, oh yeah, we have this foundation. It doesn't exactly lead to consensus. So I don't understand the point of arguing, oh, we have this one source that we can point to and say that's true, because y'all are fighting and killing over each other over it too. So
no. That's not the point. Is not consensus or that it will bring consensus. It's to draw a parallel. So if we're talking about the scientific method, if there's a method that can get us to truth about the world, that's a kind of standard that's independent of your mind or another person's mind, and so the claim is whether a person rejects the scientific method or completely rejects all of science. If there is some sort of method or standard that's independent of us that can get us to truth,
I don't think there is, because everything is shaped by cognitive biases. You dip your toes in psychology, and you see that everything is shaped by biases and perspective. So this idea that there's this magic standard, like removed from all of humanity and everybody's perspective that we can point to, I don't think such a standard exists. Empirically speaking, there's no evidence for such a standard.
So if we say ISIS is wrong, we are saying that from our perspective, we disagree with that.
Yes, we are, because...
Okay.
That's just how it is.
I'm glad. No, I admire the fact that you're consistent. That you're willing to sort of say, no, look, this is you're being. Well, in other words, you're being consistent with your worldview on.
Well, because
on
it's empirically true. Because if you didn't have the perspective you have, you wouldn't be saying ISIS was wrong. If you were born over there and had a dad who was in ISIS, chances are you would say ISIS was right. Of course, I don't see why that's so odd to grasp. It's clearly empirically true if we look at human beings and how we behave and how we form our thoughts.
All right, I think we should have a debate one day on the sort of foundations of ethics and see where that goes. But we have only about 5 minutes left, and we have 4 minutes left and 4 callers. All right, we're going to try and take these rapid fire. If we didn't, whoever we don't get to, we apologize. Please call in on a different program. But let's take these rapid fire. Who do we have on the line?
Hi, my name is Clyde Sellers. I'm calling from Rochester, New York, and I'm Muslim. I have more of a liberal idea of Islam, and I really don't have much to say to the lady up there that she has.
You can speak to me directly. I'm here. Yeah. Hi.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, I don't have much to say to you as far as your choice of being an atheist, but. We have a thing in society today which we try to bash each other as far as our beliefs. And I'm thinking that this is a tool for society to use you as an example to bash Islam. And if we look at God, there's only one God. And you know of the Quran, how it says, Lakum de lakum wali yadin.
Yeah, but then I get to go to hell too. I mean, and also there's the punishments for apostasy. But to address what you said about people using me as an example to bash Islam, I 100% agree with you. And when people do that, I yell at them, and I don't let myself be used that way. I'm actually an advocate for education about Islam and Muslims within atheism. So when atheists come out and say all Muslims are violent and horrible, I shut them down. So that's actually part of the work that I do, is to humanize and demystify this stereotype that people have about Muslims being bad. So I'm actually that's the heart of what I do as an atheist. So it is an important point. Ex-Muslims are used as a prop by these atheists to bash Muslims, and I don't agree with that at all, and neither do all the ex-Muslims that I know.
Yeah, and I mean, think about what she's said here tonight. She said, "Hey, I was raised as a Muslim. I was reading some material. I came to think that these scientific arguments weren't persuasive and actually pointed in a different direction. I saw some problem with women's issues in Islam, and at the end of the day, I rejected it all." I mean, if she can't say that, if she can't just give her basic background and what she thinks. I mean, what kind of society do we live in? I mean,
in the caller's defense, I think what he meant is true, because
that you could be used and say, look, this, and I kind of don't know how, because you're not out bashing everyone. It's not like.
But people use me. They make assumptions about me, and they use ex-Muslims as a prop in their arguments. And this is something that I fight against actively in the atheist community. Because you have your Harrises and your Dawkinses saying ex-Muslim women are proof why we should, destroy Islam and things like that, and destroy Muslims. So I get his point entirely, and it's something that I've really dedicated myself to fighting. So yeah, he does have a legitimate point there.
Okay, and I'm listening to you. You sound so educated, and I'm just wondering how you can go from the love of Islam to the extreme of being an atheist. I don't understand it.
Well, I don't think it's extreme to not believe in the supernatural. I don't believe it's an extreme position. And Islam, that's again something I could go on and on about the reasons why I left, but I just found no compelling evidence to believe in it personally.
Okay. and we all have our right to our opinion. And I would think this, well, I hope this would be, in fact, that if we can just stop letting our personal beliefs get in the way of us being more united, this country, this world would be a better place. But
I don't think anyone can disagree with that.
Yeah, but as you see, we are so quick to bash each other's religion instead of to enjoying, or not to enjoy, but just to see our differences and know that we're different, period.
Okay.
You know? Okay, and I don't want to take up too much time. Thank you for...
All right. We're actually out of time, so the callers who are still on the line, I'm sorry, but it happens that we run out of time. As far as my views, I think that we do need to criticize each other's positions and to stand up in public debate, and that Christians, Muslims, Jews,
absolutely.
atheists all need to, like we just did out in California. And that, that part of what has worked in Western civilization is that we can openly criticize, and we understand we're not going to kill and slaughter each other over it. And I think that when we become,
I think that's what his point was, and I think part of it is coming from a minority position as a Muslim. It's tough to be a Muslim in the United States, especially post 9/11. And I think his perspective is people tend to fixate on the differences between minority groups and the majority groups in the United States rather than focusing on shared humanity. I don't think he was suggesting that we shouldn't question each other's beliefs and engage in rational debate, but that's hard to do when certain minorities are stigmatized and demonized and dehumanized. It's hard to find good criticisms of Islam that don't degenerate into essentially racism. That's I think the point that he was making that I agree with.
All right. Well, thank you, Heina. Thank you, viewers and callers. We are out of time, so we're going to have to cut it off right now. We'll see you next time here on the Trinity Channel. God bless you all.